Good morning everyone, welcome to the EduSat network. Hope you all had a wonderful Holi. So today we are going to discuss the test of significance in communication research. We are going to look at the meaning and also how the test is done. For this discussion, we have with us in the studio Dr. Devesh Kishore, renowned academician in the field of journalism and mass communication. So let's welcome sir, and we would begin with the lecture. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Today we are going to discuss about test of significance. What does it mean? How it is used? What is its importance to a researcher? And what are the methodology which can be used to work out the test of significance? So let us have a first understanding why test of significance, why it is required, and what is its role in research. All of us as researcher always draw sample from the population, because population is too big and we cannot study the whole population. If we are studying the whole population itself, then perhaps test of significance is not required. But in most of the social researches and studies, we are drawing the sample. And when we draw the sample, we should ensure that sample is real representative of the population. If it is not real representative of the population, then the problem arises. Problem means there will be certain variables which will be attached with the sample and the population. If all the variables are not similar, then it won't come out in the sample itself, and research results will be wrong. So sometimes the sample which is drawn from the population is different in certain characteristics of the population parameter. For example, if you are drawing a sample from the population, let's say about Delhi city, and in Delhi city if there are 1.5 crores of people, and if you draw a sample of 20,000, then you have to check whether this sample which has been drawn has the same characteristics in terms of age, in terms of education, in terms of socioeconomic level, and all other important variables. Now how to check it? It means you must know the parameters of the total population, and then you must know the total parameters of your sample, match them so that you can say, well, they are alike, and therefore my sample is representative. So test of significance has been developed to find out this type of differences which exist between the population parameters and the sample parameters. So therefore the errors which might creep in our sample may be method of drawing the sample, or maybe some other errors. Researcher has to be very careful about this research. So for measuring these errors, finding out these errors, in statistics we use test of significance, which will tell the researcher that your sample on the basis of the test of significance has got levels 0.5, 0.1, 0.001, whether it is significantly different or not. So that is called test of significance. Once we have understood test of significance, we go to the level of significance. Level of significance means what? That when you apply the test of significance, the probability of getting a difference equal to, underline, greater than the observed is generally found. So when you have drawn the sample, you will find the difference between the parameters of the population and the sample may be same, or they may be higher, or they may have difference. So the value of such probability which are used to provide rough lines of separation between the acceptance and rejection. The important thing is acceptance and rejection. This is in the hand of the researcher. If he finds the difference is higher, it does not match with the population parameters, then you will have to reject the sample, because the findings which will be drawn from that sample will take you astray, will not give you the correct results. So, the prime responsibility of the researcher is that the sample which is drawn from the population has the similar characteristics which population has. It has same parameters, matching parameters with the population. So, when the differences are observed, they are different levels, that is called level of significance. We are observing differences on various levels. Levels could be 0.05, 0.01, 0.001. There can be several levels, but if this level is high, then we may have to reject the sample itself. But after the analysis, if we find it is only a difference of 0.05 or 0.01 or 0.001, it should be acceptable, because this is not a significant difference between the sample and the population. So, therefore, the sample a researcher will have to take care of their parameters. When we have understood the level of significance, next term which we must understand is the degrees of freedom. What is degrees of freedom? Whenever you take the number of items or class intervals, you will find that the last number which will be left has no choice. Suppose there are 10 items with you and somebody has a choice, he wants choiced items. He can have choice in first, second, third, fourth, like that it will go on, there will be choice. I may take fifth, I may take sixth, I may take seventh, I may take eighth. But when all the ninth have been given, the last item left has got no choice, because that is you have to take it. So, the person who is the last has no choice to take that. Therefore, freedom is only 9 items. Out of 10, 9 items will have freedom, 10th item will have no freedom, because this will be forced on that person. He will have to take, because there is no choice left between the items. So, degrees of freedom means that in any item, number of items, in any class intervals, the total number of items minus 1, because last one has no choice. Therefore, degrees of freedom is always taken as n minus 1. N is the total number of items and 1 is the last item. So, therefore, we say 1 last item has no choice to be taken. So, therefore, degrees of freedom when we work out, that is always n minus 1 or total number minus 1, because last item has no freedom of choice. So, that is the degrees of freedom. Now, let us understand what are the tests which are available, are generally used. There are still more tests available, but generally we are using 4 type of tests. One is called Ttest. We will discuss. There are in Ttest also there are 2 main types of tests, like a student Ttest and Fisher's Ttest. Then second test is Ftest, which is known as analysis of variance. F is always written in capital and T is always written in small. Never commit that mistake. And then chi-square test. Chi-square is most of the time people use symbol which is similar to x, but it is not X test, it is a chi-square test which is named as. And fourth generally which we are using is Z test. Most of us in research you will find usually using these 4 tests, but first 3 tests like Ttest, Ftest, chi-square test, they are more frequently used in our analysis. So, today's our discussion will be basically based on Ttest. We will not be able to cover all the tests today. So, Ttest we will cover and we will have a detailed discussion how to work out Ttest, taking an example, doing the analysis and calculations, working out the results, and from these results how do we interpret it. All that steps we will discuss today about Ttest. In next session we will discuss about Ftest and chi-square test, how they are used, what is their meaning, what is the formula and all that. Ttest will be discussed in detail with the using the example. So, Ttest is the commonly used test I explained to you, and this is basically used for hypothesis testing. I hope you know a hypothesis you have been using as a researcher. Hypothesis means assumption, whatever you have assumed, and that assumption, that your imagination, you have collected data on that, and then on the basis of that data how you work out level of significance, the results, then you use the Ttest. Nowadays 2 major kinds of Ttest are used. One is called student's Ttest and second is called Fisher's Ttest. It does not mean that Fisher Ttest is not used by the students. Students are all using these tests, but the name has been put as a student's Ttest and this has been put as Fisher's Ttest. Who developed this test on the basis of his name, Fisher's Ttest has been evolved. So, let us first discuss the student test which is being used. This is also known as 2 sample Ttest. The student test is also known as 2 sample Ttest or independent sample Ttest. It is on the basis of the sample which you are using, that is why it has been renamed. Now, what is the important thing in this? It tests whether or are not 2 independent populations have different mean values on some measure. Means if you have 2 independent populations and their mean values average by using arithmetic average or whatever you have worked out, whether these values are matching or not matching. So, therefore, the difference between the samples, that is x is a sample mean, y is sample mean, and how whether these 2 sample means are different or not different. If they are different, then it means they have been taken from different populations. If they are same, it means they have been taken from the same population. So, therefore, suppose you are drawing 2 samples, then you can work out their means, and with the help of this test you can find out whether they represent the population and whether among themselves matching is there or not. That is what is very important. Now, let us take the example to understand this better. I have taken a small example so that we can discuss. Otherwise, we usually do not take such a small example. Let us say 10 printed advertisements are taken from a newspaper and at random means random sampling, whose length in centimeters are given below. So 10 printed advertisements has been taken. 52 is the length of 155, 57, 65. They have been arranged in the order of their length. Now we have to use a t-test to find the suggestion that arbitrary mean length of print advertisements in the newspaper is 60 centimeters. This is what we have assumed as a hypothesis, that most of the advertisements in the newspaper, their length is around 60 centimeters. And we calculated from a newspaper, and we have find out the 10 printed advertisements, and we find different lengths. So lengths we have written. Now the question is, when you have 10 lengths of a printed advertisements and you assume that it should be around 60 in length, then whether this 60 is length is your assumption is correct or not. So then you use the instantaneous. By just seeing the data you can't say, because how can you say 52, 55, 57, 61, 65, 67, 68, 70 and 71. Now whatever you assume you can't say. You have to have some method of analysis so that you can surely say whether this assumption which I have taken as average is correct or not. For that, students' t-test is basically used. Now let us continue with this example. In this example, on one side you have written the length in centimeters. You have serial numbers, 10 advertisements are there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then lengths are written 52, 55, 57, 57. And assumption was 60. So you find out the difference from 60. In case of first length it was 52, 60, then difference is minus 8. In second 55, difference is minus 5. Third was 67, the difference is minus 3. Next was 61 and difference was 1 plus 1. Now it is more than 60, therefore it is all going to be plus. So that is what we call it D. D means difference from the assumed average of length from the original data, and then we add it up, and you will see from this slide that 30 is the total, because minus will be reduced from plus. So ultimately is left with 30, and after that this difference, because there is minus, minus, plus, to remove all this we have square it. Minus 8 multiplied by minus 8 becomes 64. So minus is gone. Minus 5 is multiplied by minus 5, 25. Minus is gone. So remove all these minuses. What we have done, that all the data we have done the square, and that is what we call it D square. So D square is the difference of your average which you have assumed in terms of the length given to you, and then it has been squared up, and then the total has been worked out as 474. Now let us go for further analysis. Arbitrary mean was 60, do not forget about that. And then if you go back, you will see that 30 was the D and D square was 474. Now the formula we use x, it's summation of x divided by n. N is the degrees of freedom. Here total number is n is 10, but when it comes degrees of freedom it will be reduced. Here the value of x, sigma x is 630, and the sum of length of advertisements, whatever advertisements are given, if you total them up it comes 630. So therefore, n is 10, the number of advertisements, and then we use this formula and we reach to a conclusion of 384. Now we are going in deeper into it because we are going to use the formula in greater detail. These formula you will have to remember by heart, or you will have to note it down on a piece of paper, keep it ready with you, or you can have softwares where these formulas are already there, and these softwares can be used just by putting the data. Nowadays most of the people are using softwares where data is given or fed to the computer, and then the computer itself works it out using all these formula, calculation, multiplication is done, and then they work out the value, that is the observed value. So I am not going in very much detail. If you are interested, you can note down all these formulas and then you can work it out. When I was a student about 50-60 years back, then we didn't have the calculators, we didn't have the softwares, we used to do by hand, or there used to be calculating machine called Ttest. They were all hand operated, and we used to go on multiplying, adding, subtracting and using these formula. Then they were very relevant to us. We have to write it down, keep it in place. Whenever we want to work it out, we work out the tables and we do it. But nowadays life has become much easier and much faster. You need not to go in there so much of details of the formula. You use the software, put everything into it, and you will get the result within no time. Why I am saying this? That since that facility is available, you can use those formula. Now let us come to the when the result is obtained, whether using the formula, whether using the software, result has come. That is, let us say t value has come 1.45, which has in this example it has come 1.45. Now the observed value of t is 1.45, which is less than 2.065, where you work out the standard errors, and keeping standard errors in mind, you find that this is 2.065 and is less. Your present value on the basis of calculation is 1.45, which is less than 2.05. The value of t at 5% level of significance for 9 degrees of freedom is proved to be not significant. So the way how you will calculate it is that you will compare both the values, t values with the standard errors values, and if it is less, then it is not significant. It means your sample is well drawn, is matches with the population. If it is not, then it does not match with the population. So therefore the value of t should be lower than the standard error value at that degrees of freedom, and then you can say that mean length of advertisement is 60 centimeter within limits of error of sampling. What does it mean? That you have assumed 60 centimeters. You can now assume 60 centimeters because the difference is not much. It is around 60 centimeters. So you can say the advertisement's length of newspapers mostly are 60 centimeters, and then you are not quoting a wrong result. So that is the advantage of using t-test, that you are able to find out whether the assumption which you have taken is proved to be positive or negative. I hope this is clear. If this is not clear, you must practice it, because without practicing you will not be able to work it out. It was a very simple student's t-test, and I took a very simple example to make the point very clear. Now we will go to the Fisher's t-test after the student's t-test and discuss about it. So let us come to the Fisher's t-test. Fisher t-test was developed by Mr. Fisher, and he found it out that we have used it for a small sample sizes, because the student test is basically meant for a bigger sample sizes. And here we compare two means from two samples. There what you have done? There you have taken the full sample and you had assumed the length, that is 60 centimeter, as an average. So you tested it with a sample and assumed. Here you have two samples and both the samples have their meaning, their averages, mean averages. Now you have to compare between these two whether they are matching or not. If they are not matching, it means something is wrong somewhere and they have not been properly drawn from the population. Here example I have taken of local magazines with poor paper quality but good content. Means I wanted to know whether if you use poor paper quality and content is good in both the cases, does it make any difference on sales? Because people have an assumption, if you have good quality of paper, then that magazines sell very well. If you have poor quality of paper, it doesn't sell. But they forget, if you are using art paper, extremely good quality paper, the cost will go up. While you are using a poor paper quality and still it is readable, the cost is much less. But my interest is whether it really affects on sales. If I use poor paper quality, will my sale and profit will increase? Like some of the Asian books, Asian editions of the books have been published on a low quality of paper. And there are books available in high quality of paper in the market. But it was found even the low quality of paper is used, their sale is very high, market is very high, because the reader, user is not very much bothered about the paper quality, he is bothered about the content. So if the content is good, which was good in both the cases, same content was there. So our interest is to find out whether poor quality of paper makes a difference on the sales. This is the example I have taken here. So first data which is available, I have given 43, 45, 48, 49, 51, 52. Then we have taken another magazine, local magazine with fine paper quality. Earlier was the low paper quality. Fine paper quality, sale was higher, 47, 49, 41, 51, like this. Now we have to test whether good paper quality effects on the sale of the magazine. That is the question. And this question could be answered only by using Fisher T-test. No other methodology, qualitative methodology, can prove that good quality of paper increases the sales of the magazine, keeping in view the cost, which is another important factor. So Fisher T is used in that case. Now let us name them. One type of data which you have will be called X, sales of magazines with good paper quality, and Y, sales of magazine with poor paper quality. So we have two series, X and Y. The median of newspaper with good paper quality is 5.3, which we have worked out, and we name it as A. The median of the newspaper with poor quality is 48, which is denoted as B. So you have two series or two data on sales, sales of magazine with good paper quality, then you have data available with poor quality of paper, which is named as Y. So you have two series, X and Y, and then median you have worked out for X is 53 and for Y it is 48. So this is the first thing which we have to do. Then we calculate, put this data into tables and work it out. See this transparency, next one, where you can see on one side we have written all X, which we said X is the representative of population, and same exercise we have done. We have taken out the difference from the average, like we did in student's T-test. Then we have squared it, D1 square. Then in other case the population we took it, Y population, and after Y, same exercise, we have taken out the difference from the mean and we have squared it up so that minus plus goes away. And then in the end, of course, we have totaled it up and then we work out the solution of it. So here X is 526, X was the series and total is, and they are 10 in number. So you divide by 10 and it becomes 52.6. See, the total of the sum of X is 526 and the total number of magazine of good paper qualities are 10. Never forget this X is good paper quality magazine. Then we use the same formula and we work it out that the X, in case of X 1.4 and total, then we work out in the case of Y it is 48 and in the case of total working out it becomes 60. Now we continue the test, that is the Fisher's test. We are using it and we go on using the examples in that case. Now again same thing I would suggest, because we have the softwares available, we can use these softwares and by using these softwares you will get rid of these all calculations. But if you are not using softwares or you don't have it, then you will have to use these formula, and formulae has to be worked out. You have to put the data in this, and then you can say that is the how the good quality of paper and bad quality of paper makes a difference or affect the sales of the magazine. So in both the cases you have worked out the observed value. So the observed value is 2.599, which is greater than 2.145, which being greater than 2.45, the value of T at 5% level of significance is proved to be significant. And this shows that the observed mean differs from each other. So it can be said that the good paper quality affect the sales of magazine. So these types of difficult questions can be easily solved by using these T-tests. My submission would be that try to use these tests. Until unless you use these two tests, you will not be able to understand it. I will take you a little back, so I can show you the difference between the Fisher's T-test and the student's T-test. If you are able to recall, fine. Otherwise, I will show you the transparency to highlight those points. In case of student's T-test, the series was 1. Let's go back. Now you see this slide. In student T-test, you had only one series. That is the series in which 10 items were there in terms of length of advertisements, and you assumed an average, you assumed a figure 60. Fine. So biggest difference is that here you have one series of data, one assumption is there, and you want to prove it whether this assumption is wrong or right. That was the student's T-test. If you come, let's come to the Fisher's T-test. See this slide. In this slide, you will find there are two series. One is X, another is Y. And from X series, you have taken out the median. Same thing you do it in case of Y. Also, you please note that number of items in series X are 10. In series Y, the number of items are 6. So when there are two samples with difference of items, because items are not equal, one is big sample, another is small sample, we have to take care of number of items in each sample. And if these are not available, Fisher T-test is the only solution to find it out. So the second important difference is that there are two series. In that student test, there was only one series, and assumption was one average. Here we have taken out the real averages, median based, and then we are trying to compare the average of the medians, so that we are able to know whether these two series are two samples drawn from the population have same parameters or same characteristics or not. So, this is the biggest difference. So, that is why Fisher came with a new test, otherwise student t-test was all right, there is no problem. He suggested, no, let's, for this type we may have same formula, but we will have 2 types of series, 3 types of series, and we can work out on, calculate on the same formula basis and then compare it. So, that is why you will have to very carefully see that when you use a Fisher test or a student t-test, what type of data you have, how many samples are available, and then how you are going to use it. Otherwise, you will get confused that I have now 2 samples drawn and now I do not know how to compare them. Then you will say I will go to Fisher's t-test, and that will be the only the example of this. I hope this makes the difference clear between the Fisher test and student's test. Now, let us also understand in terms of advantages or limitations. What are the limitation and advantages in case of tests, that is a student test and Fisher's t-test. As I told you, student t-test is useful when you have one series of data. For example, here we had length in centimeters of the advertisements in newspapers, and I want to make a statement. Hindustan Times carries the advertisements on social welfare activities whose area is most of the time is about 210 square centimeters. Now, if I say this, then I have to first prove it, whether my statement is correct or not correct. So, I will use the student t-test. So, student t-test is useful when I have one series of data, and this series of data we have some assumption, a hypothesis, and then we want to use that hypothesis. So, we want to test whether it is correct or not correct. In case of Fisher's, the advantage is, which is not there in student's t-test. What is the advantage? That you have 2 series of data. In case of Fisher's t-test, and you have worked out the averages, that is through median, from first series, and in second series through median. The advantage here is that you are able to take care of both the series, their averages, and comparing them. Number 1. Number 2 advantage is that in one series of data, if you have 10 numbers, 15 numbers, whatever, and in second series of data, you may not have same equal numbers, you may have 5 or you may have 7, but still you can compare them. And you can find out whether these mean averages at what level of significance you can presume that there is no error. So, this is the advantage in case of Fisher's t-test. So, students or research scholars, researchers, please first find out what type of data you have, how big this data is, do you have averages of that or you do not have the average of that. Have you worked out the hypothesis, and on the basis of the hypothesis you are working out the calculations and then declaring the results. So, that care has to be taken. If you have taken these cares, then student t-test will be useful for analyzing the data. The other test which I talked of, like F-test, which is analysis of variance. For that the purpose is a little different, which we will discuss in detail next time, that how is purpose different, how it is used in different situations and with what purposes. Same way chi-square test, Z-test. Now, as a research student or researcher, you will have to decide on your own that which test will work best for you. If you remember, we had a discussion saying tools are meant for the persons who are using the tool for getting the effective results. You may have 5 tools with you, but you must know which tool to be applied here. I give a very rude example. You may have different type of wrenches. A mechanic may have different type of wrenches, 8 number, 10 number, 20 number, 18 number. But which nut he has to open, he must know what is the size of that nut and which wrench will fit in there, so that he can easily, smoothly open it. Now, that has to be decided by the mechanic. Computer will not decide it. This will be decided by the research worker. Once you decide it, then software will work. But that decision is very important. So, therefore, as a research scholar, you must go through in depth, read about all these tests, advantages, disadvantages, limitations, how these tests are used, how the interpretations are drawn. All that you must be very clear in your mind. If you are not, then as I find, most of the research scholars, they are away from it. They are very much scared, they don't know. Sir, we don't know how to use this t-test. It's very difficult, very complicated. Once they are explained, they say, oh, it's very easy, we can do it. So, the point is understanding. You must understand the utility of the test, how useful it will be, for what purpose it will be useful, and not by using only one test. You have to learn all the 4 or 5 tests, so that you can compare them, which I will use for my data, which is useful for my data, and then you will use that particular type of test. Otherwise, if you do not know what is the student's t-test, Fisher's t-test, what is F-test, what is Z-test, then how you will decide which I should apply to my data? You are applying tests for certain results which you want to have it. But if you are not clear yourself about their utility part of it, you will not be able to make use of it. So, I am emphasizing that point, that please understand all the tests, their merits, demerits, processing, where they are useful, how I am going to use them. Then take a decision whether I will go for Ttest or whether I will go for Ttest or I will go for Ftest. Then decide yourself. This is a very important decision which you have to take, and that decision can be taken when you are well aware of their limitation, delimitations, qualities and all that. I hope this make the point clear about the Ttest, student Ttest or Fisher Ttest, which is to be used for your statistical analysis. So, Ttests are tools in the hand of the researcher to find out levels of significance of whatever errors might have been creeped into the due to sampling process, whether they can be waved off because their level is 0.05 or 0.01 or not, which is a very important decision which has to be taken by the student himself. And I have used here very small examples, but try to use some large examples. Once you are familiar with the small examples of solving these problems, then go to bigger example, so that you are more clear about these tests, how to use the test, why to apply the test, what is its importance, and all has to be taken care of. So, this is why it is called test of significance. The error which has creeped into your sample, is it significant or not? If it is significant, what is to be done? Sample is to be withdrawn. If it is not significant, you can go ahead. Results will not be affected. I find most of the research workers, especially in social sciences, they draw the sample, and on the basis of the sample, they go on and making the analysis through percentages and go on interpreting the research results without testing whether the sample drawn by them is error free or it has got some type of problems in terms of matching the parameters from the total population. Now, that is what the big question is being raised. The social science research, how do you presume the results will be correct? And that is reflected and seen. I would not like to comment, but nowadays you are seeing the election opinion results, and they say we have drawn the sample from this, that. And earlier years, if you see the data, some of the opinion polls have proved totally wrong. Why? Because they did not find out the level of significance in terms of error of their sample. India is a vast country, And if you take 10 people from Chennai and 20 people from Assam and 10 people from Jammu Kashmir, and you draw a sample, how will you get the correct results? Or you have taken only on telephones, or through questionnaires. You know that only those people can be covered by these methods who are well known to these technologies, and those who can approach and send the data to you. So that may not be giving the correct results. That's why opinion poll suffers. They give the wrong results because sample is not properly drawn, is not tested at significance level, and then hurriedly we do it. So, and we blame, oh, this opinion poll is not good, doesn't give you the correct results, technology, statistical analysis is not correct. No, if you not use correctly, how will you get the correct results? Nowadays you are seeing, you must be observing a lot of opinion polls come, and these opinion polls give you different data. If the technique is same, if level of significance is all right, sample is representative, why there should be such difference? There is difference because error has creeped in every time, and people have not taken the error of the not taken the care of the error. That's why the different results are coming, and the readers, viewers, listeners get confused what is correct and what is not correct because they don't get the correct picture. And the root is causes the sample is not drawn properly. Our error has not been checked. How much error is there in the sample itself? That's why the results which come, which we all of us see, and blame the methodology which is not correct. Methodology is not properly used. I give another crude example. A scalpel, you know the scalpel which doctor uses for operation, just like knife, very sharp knife, he cuts, opens up, and this is. Now that scalpel can be used for operation saving the life of a person, and it is done. But the same scalpel can be used to kill somebody. The scalpel remains the same.
Right, sir.
So therefore, the research technology which you are using, you must know how to use it.
Absolutely.
Then you will get the good correct result.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for the very insightful lecture, and I'm sure in subsequent lectures we are going to learn about more tests of significance to be used in communication research. So today we learned how significant it is to actually test a sample to know how valid it is in order to get correct results. So amongst various things we looked at what is the test of significance, the levels of significance, then to sum it up, we looked at student Ttest and Fisher test in detail. We looked at the advantages and limitations of the test. So I'm sure that you will be here for subsequent lectures, and you could also view this lecture on YouTube. So we thank you, sir, for being here, and hope to see you soon. All of you have a nice day. Thank you.